again from New York City. It is April something, 2020. So since my last vlog, I put a question on my Instagram story and I asked people if they could share with me things that they've been dealing with mentally amidst this pandemic. I also asked people if they would like to share with me what they'd want me to vlog about. I was a bit surprised by the amount of people who responded that they are missing their exes, that they are thinking about their exes, and so this is what I'm going to talk about. So the thing that's happening right now is that we all have a lot more time to think, and I think that's a big part of that. Not only do we have a lot more time to think, but we're probably having way less social contact. I once read a study, it was a long time ago, and I don't remember where it was from, but the study basically said that if you are touched 8 times a day, so that's even somebody bumping into you on the street, somebody giving you a hug, somebody giving you a handshake, if you are touched 8 times a day, you decrease your chances of developing depression by some percentage in the 30 percentile range. I really think that makes a lot of sense because we as humans, we need human connection. It is a very normal need to want intimacy on all levels, intellectually, spiritually, physically. So I think that right now we are a bit deprived of that, and so maybe something else that's fueling the thoughts of missing a previous partner could be because of loneliness, or not even just feelings of loneliness, because I think loneliness tends to have a pretty negative tone around it, but really I just think that we're deprived of touch and social connection and being social. When these thoughts are coming up about a previous partner, let's just tackle the first two, that you're missing them and you're thinking about them. Now, you have to kind of check yourself and think okay, is this biologically, do I miss this person? Is it just that I miss touch? Is it just that I miss the intimacy? Or do I really miss this person? Can you text them? Are you guys still friends? Is that an option? Maybe you actually really miss the person, but maybe you don't actually really miss the person and you just miss someone being there. And it's being especially triggered right now because, like I'm saying, we are being very, very socially deprived. Now, I also want you to think about what is it that you're actually thinking about when it comes to your previous partner. Do you regret the way that things went? Do you miss their company? Do you miss what they brought to your life? Do you miss their energy? What is it that you're missing? What is it that you're thinking about? Identify it. And that's another thing too, is when these things come up when you're thinking about an ex, don't push it away. Don't push it away. I feel like that's one of the worst things that we've kind of been taught in society is oh, be positive, don't think about the negative, push this, don't think about that. It's no. You need to invite it in. You need to make a safe space for your thoughts to be heard, because a lot of times if you just hear it out, you can either hear one, that it's ridiculous and you don't need to put energy into the thought, or you can say hey, wait a minute, something inside me is telling me that there's something that needs my attention that I haven't quite given my attention to yet. For example, let's say that your relationship didn't end well and there was a certain kind of behavior that your partner said, hey, the reason why this didn't work out is because you always do this thing, and then because you really haven't had the time to process what kind of behavior that is and how it affects you and other people, now you have the time to process what that behavior is and how it could be destructive. And now this time, because you have more time to think, your mind is hey, oh, now this person has a little bit more time to think, let me push this at them because they'll pay attention to, images of the ex in mind, and then maybe they'll start to think like, oh, why am I thinking about this person? You know what I mean? I think the mind, like, from everything I studied, and this is just my opinion, and like, I could be totally wrong, but it totally works for me, is sometimes when a thought or an image comes into your head, you don't have to take it at face value. For example, say I start thinking about a person and I'm like, oh, why am I thinking about this person? I don't want to think about this person. This person hurt me so much, I didn't like them. But then I think like, okay, is something going on in my life? Like, is there something that I still haven't learned from what this person was maybe meant to teach me? And so I start to look at the thought in my head as something more metaphorical, something more creative, and I think like, okay, here's my ex, he's popping up in my head. I'm like, okay, why are you in there? And then I'm like, okay, maybe there's some things I still haven't processed, so let me sit with it. Is there something about this relationship that's still bothering me that I could spend time with and meditate on? Am I not over this person in general? You gotta have this dialogue with yourself. It's really, really important. I think the last thing that I would ever tell anybody to do is to run away from their thoughts. You don't want that. I feel like the best way to face like any kind of unpleasantness in the mind is like you have to face it. You have to face it. You have to get away from this idea that you always have to think positively, because that's just not human. It's not human. You can be positive, meaning like, hoping for, the best, but, being prepared for other things, like being realistic. I still think that being realistic is being positive because you're being proactive. There's just a lot of toxicity around positivity when it comes to like positive thoughts, and I just really want to like drive that home, is like, get away from that kind of thinking. Your mind is your space. It's part of your human experience, and know that thoughts will come in and they'll come through, and not every thought is yours, and not every thought needs your energy, and not every thought is what it is at face value. Sometimes you need to sit with it. If it's a particularly disturbing thought, maybe there's something recurring in your mind, and because it keeps recurring because you're not giving it the space to be heard. So kind of take this approach also when the ex is coming up. So maybe it's not that, there's something that you still need to process. And maybe it's not that there's something that you still need to learn. It could be that you genuinely miss this person, and that's okay. You also have to understand that it is possible to miss somebody and not want them back. It's also possible to miss somebody and feel like you just want to be their friend. It's also possible to miss somebody and feel like you don't want to do anything about it. That's okay. I think like we think that, certain feelings need to like exist on their own a lot of times, and truth be told is that multiple feelings can exist at once, and they can kind of be together, and you can let them be there in a creative dichotomy, and that's okay. You need to open yourself up to that. I think part of having like an empowered perspective on the mind is that you allow for your mind to be a creative space of thoughts, instead of a place where you're not allowing certain things in, where it's very restrictive. So now on the other hand, your thoughts right now about a previous partner could absolutely be triggered by loneliness. I think one of the best quotes I ever read it said, you can't be lonely if you like who you're alone with. And that's something that I really love. I don't really feel lonely anymore. The only feeling I ever get is like I will feel socially deprived, and I have felt that way. Like I think it was a couple days ago, it was like, oh my gosh, I just like need to go and like see humans, and I knew that I needed that. But there's a difference. There's a difference between feeling like, oh my god, I can't stand myself anymore. I need to get the fuck out of the house. I feel so uncomfortable. My mind is driving me crazy and I have nothing to do. I'm bored. I hate this phrase, I'm bored. I sometimes will accidentally say it, but I know that I don't mean it, because really for me, boredom means that you are not grateful for something happening right now. And I think we can always find something to be grateful for, and I think that we can always also find something to do. I just think that like boredom is kind of an insult to life in a way. And I know it's kind of like a pretty extreme outlook on boredom, but let me read this quote actually. Alright, let me introduce you to an amazing book. It is not well known, but it should be. I question all the time why it isn't. But it's called Speedology, Speed on New York on Speed by Timothy Speed Lovage. And it says, boredom is an illusion. Boredom is the continuous state of not noticing that the unexpected is constantly arriving while the anticipated is never showing up. Boredom is anti-cruise propaganda. Cruising is an act, the realization that standing still is exalting. What he means by the cruise is this constant state of being like surprised by everything, or kind of seeing that like everything is quite amazing. There's an amazing quote, amazing. There's a really There's a really incredible quote by Albert Einstein which says, it's on my wall, there are two ways to live. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. I try to think about this, like when I have a lot of time to myself. I try to think like, what are things that I haven't had the chance to do in a long time? Like yesterday I painted a piece of furniture. I've been watching all these films on Netflix that I haven't had the chance to watch, and I've been reading books, I've been making vlogs, I've been doing what I can, because that's all you can do right now. You can only do your best right now. If you find that, you know, these feelings about an ex are coming up and it's being triggered because of loneliness, just know that there's so many different ways of achieving intimacy that aren't as propounded upon in society. If that's the right word. Propounded? Is that the right word? Okay, yes, that is the right word. So yeah, we aren't taught that, you know, real intimacy is, I think, being able to share your feelings with people, and that's not just romantic. Like, I think a lot of times we really narrow in on romanticism as this like only way of having intimacy, or having like this deep, rich intimacy. And the truth is that, yeah, it's a wonderful level of intimacy. It's very deep, and what makes it so deep, I think, is this communal responsiveness that you have between two people. It's like, oh, well, you know, you kind of assume that there's a certain level of responsibility that you have for each other, and it could be really beautiful. But the truth is that intimacy is not just being like, I love you. You know, intimacy is maybe calling your best friend, being like, hey, I'm having this really weird thought. Can you help me? And you and your friend kind of work out the thought together, and I think that's such a beautiful form of intimacy. Another form of intimacy could be spending time with yourself, doing things that you really love. I would honestly say that one of the most beautiful moments of intimacy I've ever had with myself was when I was living in London, and I had for myself, I thought it was a very big room, and there was enough space for me to just lay on the floor completely, and I would just come home sometimes and I would just lay on my floor and I would listen to music, and it was just ecstatic. And I was like, wow, this is just what I want to do right now. I just want to lay on the floor, and I really have experimented with that a lot, just really listening to these feelings inside me that's like, well, what do you feel like doing right now? Do you want to pluck the hair out of your armpits. Like, just spending time with yourself, maybe like plucking hair out of weird places can sometimes be so entertaining. Yeah, it's sometimes very entertaining. Can you paint your nails? Can you do kind of like little upkeeping things for yourself? Like, these little moments with yourself, I think are really important. I think it's really important as well to have these moments with yourself where you get really weird, you know, like I have these moments where like I will just lip sync to music in the mirror, and like it's very private, it's very personal, but like those moments to myself feel so necessary. And I think like we don't talk about that. We don't talk about those intimate moments with ourselves, and we don't talk about like how deeply satisfying they are. Another thing I would like to say is that what I learned in school, so I specifically learned analytical psychology, which is not your more conventional psychology, so we weren't really taught to pathologize everything and like have a thought like I have depression, I have anxiety, I have PTSD, I have blah blah blah, you know. It's taking the thought, taking the feelings that are coming up inside of you and giving it space before you're like, oh, I have a problem. It's like more like, okay, what's happening? Now, I think that being able to reach this state where you can have the space around your feelings takes a lot of internal work. This is not something that happens overnight. This honestly took me years to really gauge. And what I want to say is that what helped me get there was a lot of therapy. A lot of therapy, a lot of friends willing to help me, a lot of processing, a lot of having deep conversations with people who loved me through a lot of reflection, through meditation, through, you know, listening to people online who had something to say about psychology. And I did a lot of work, so don't think that this is something that can just happen, but think that this is something that is possible. It is possible, and it is possible for you to have power over what's happening in your head, and it is possible for you to not feel, you know, disturbed or bad or sad or guilty for having feelings or thinking about an ex. Because it may not mean what you think it might mean until you sit with it. So to finish, I would like to share this quote, which I think is, it's very hopeful. It's a quote that really spoke to me at a time where I needed something to show me that it is possible for me to overcome a lot of the issues that I was like facing within myself. It's just a beautiful quote. It's in the same book again. Our fears are tour guides. They're begging to be overcome. On the other side of every fear, ecstasy awaits us, hanging out on some romantically lit street corner, wondering what's taking us so long. That's one of my favorite quotes ever, and I think it really rings true, and I think it's a quote that helps to give us a different relationship to the mind, which is more inviting and creative, instead of kind of creating a pretty hostile environment within the mind where you're beating yourself up and you're beating up your thoughts. And like I was saying from the beginning, it's like whatever's coming up for you right now, and we have a lot more time to think, it is possible for you to move through things that might be uncomfortable, but just know that on the other side of it there are pleasant feelings and wonderful things to be learned and know about yourself. So hang in there.